Hello, I'm Sherrill and welcome to my sewing room. This is a continuation of the Beginner's Sampler Quilt series. So if you're just getting started, there are 12 blocks in this quilt and I take you through all steps to complete this quilt. Now if you're interested in taking this project on, at the very end of the video, in the upper right hand corner is a link you can click on that will start taking you through all of the videos that are involved. Okay, what I want to talk to you about in this is how we're going to lay all the fabric out to get everything layered properly so you can do your top stitching or quilting stitches. So first I want to talk to you about surface area. Where are you going to lay this out? You have a lot of options, okay? Now if you're not lucky enough to have a big large table to do this on, you can lay it on the floor and do it. It's a little bit of a back killer when you do it, but it can be done. The problem with doing it on the floor is if you're laying it out on carpet, when you go to smooth all your fabric out, it doesn't smooth very well. And then also when you either baste it together or use pins to hold all the layers together, often you catch right onto that carpet, and I've snagged my carpet a lot. So I haven't done it that way in many years. Now I don't recommend doing it on hardwood floors because you will scratch the floor with your pins and needles. So I don't recommend that. If you've got linoleum, you've got the same issue, or even tile. You could scratch it with your pins and needles. Now you could do it on a dining room table, but make sure you have a large cutting mat to protect that table because you have the same problem. The pins and needles could scratch the surface, ruining your table. The best way to do it is to use a utility table. You know those fold-up ones? Borrow them from friends and neighbors. Put several of them side by side, and that'll give you a lot of room. And utility tables, it's not an issue to worry about scratching them. They're utility tables. Okay, so that's what I recommend as the best option for doing it. All right, I'm going to do a quick review of the last step in the previous video. After you got your fabric prepared for the back of the quilt, you want to lay it with the front side facing down and the back side is up. Then lay down your cotton batting on top and then your quilt top face up. All right, then make sure you have at least 2 inches all the way around that quilt. Now, your quilt top, extending past the raw edges. Now, if you have excess fabric hanging out on one or more edges, cut that off. But make sure you still leave 2 inches because your quilt now is getting heavy. So you don't want to carry a lot of extra baggage around. So get rid of any bulk that is there. Okay? Now, you want to flip it over. So now you're flipped it over and you've got the back of the quilt is up. All right, so Mr. Cameraman, let's come over this way. So now you've got your quilt top on the bottom, but the back of it is up, your batting and the fabric for the back. Okay, you've got all of that up. So now your next step is to line up your quilt on 2 edges of your table, depending on the table space you have. If you have enough table space that covers the entire quilt, you're doing good. So now you've got it lined up on 2 edges and there's quilt hanging over the other 2 edges. Now you want to smooth the layers out. So I used to use my hands to smooth it out, but I find that it didn't smooth very well and it took a long time and you were constantly adjusting. So what I like to do is use this big 24-inch ruler. Start in the center of your quilt and you're going to glide across your quilt. Don't press and then come back, glide again. Okay, So you want to start in the center and work your way out. Then go the opposite way. Keep going across the quilt. Okay? So you've got this half smoothed out. Now you need to have a buddy with you who's going to help you shift this quilt. So you each take up an end of the quilt, lift, pull it in the direction that you just smoothed out to where now the other two edges are in a line with the edge of the table. And repeat the process. Start in the middle and smooth out, going across the other side, then crisscross again, all the way over. Okay, now you've got the back of the quilt smoothed out. Now you need to have a partner again. You each need to take an end of this quilt and flip it to where the top of your quilt is now facing up. So I'll be back in just 1 second while my husband helps me turn my quilt over. Hello? Well, the second is up. We've got it flipped over. So now the top of your quilt is on top, your quilt top piece, face up. Then you've got the batting and the back of the fabric. You're going to repeat that process you did on the back. So I've got my quilt lined up on these two edges here. I'm going to take the ruler, repeat that smoothing process. So start in the middle and glide it across. And just keep going across your quilt until it's done. Then you want to go crisscross the other way. Okay? So you're going to repeat that same process. Then lift and shift the quilt in the other direction so that you can smooth out the other edge. All right, so now you've got it all smoothed out. Now you want to shift the quilt and pull it to where it's centered on the table, to where you have equal amounts of quilt hanging around all four edges. So now I'm going to go over how to attach all the layers together. All right, now, one of the methods that I used to use years and years ago was taking a large needle and doing very big basting stitches all the way across, okay? Really big. And you would start in the middle of the quilt, go all the way across. Then you would begin to work your way out, doing all these rows of stitching, you know, maybe 5 inches apart. And then you would shift the quilt, do the other side going across. Then you would go back the other way and crisscross over it, okay? So it's very tedious, very, very tedious, and it's not my favorite way to do it. But there are people who still do it that way. One of the methods that I finally started doing was safety pins, okay? Let me get them untangled here. Now there's several types of safety pins out there that you can use. Notice this side is straight and on this one it's curved. A lot of quilters like this one because it's pretty easy to do this. Come up and go through, okay? One of the reasons why I don't use this one is I have a really bad right hand. It doesn't really work very well because of an injury. So I find these little curved ones to be difficult for me. So I use the larger ones, all right? One of the problems with the larger ones is that the point sometimes on them is a little thick and you have a hard time getting it through all your layers. These, the points oftentimes are a little thinner and can get through the layers easier. One of the problems I have with these is that I can't get it closed at all. But on this one, I have to stick my finger in there and lift it up with my finger so that I can get it closed. The problem with that is if you have really pretty nails, you scratch them up. So there is a tool out there that is available, and because I don't do this anymore, I've misplaced my tool. I don't know where it is, but it kind of looks like a screwdriver, except it's not. And you use that to push underneath the pin, and you use it to help you close it so that you don't scratch up your nails, all right? So that's another option that you can do. So this is my preferred method if you're gonna pin, but many quilters like this. So use what works for you the best. All right, now that I've talked over how to get your quilt attached, now you've got it all attached. Remember, pin in the middle and work your way out. It's just like doing the hand basting. Same process. Start in the middle, work your way out, and you might have to still smooth a little bit as you go along. Now, the next video will be talking about top stitching. But before I leave you, start looking for a walking foot if you don't have one. Walking feet help to hold the layers of the quilt together while you're stitching. Because even though you've got everything pinned or hand basted, your fabric can still shift a little bit when stitching. If you use a standard presser foot, I guarantee you it will shift your fabric and you'll have little tucks all over your quilt. So start looking for a walking foot. Try to get one that has this little attachment on it, and what this little attachment does is that when you're stitching, let's say this was my previous line of stitching, it's a guide so you can keep equal amounts of distance between all the different rows of stitching. Okay, well, I hope all of this information was helpful to you. Now, to keep informed on all my future videos, click on one of my subscribe buttons. There's one down there in the lower right hand corner. It's red, it says subscribe. And then in the upper left hand corner is a round picture of my face. That's also a subscribe button, so you can click on that too. Now, when you click on it, YouTube will prompt you for your email address. Enter that information, and the next time I have a new video, YouTube sends you a brief email with a big button in the center. You click on it and it takes you directly to my latest video. I'm Sherrill. I'm really glad you came to my sewing room. I'll see you next time, and happy sewing.